Today we have a set of shiurim on the Indian of the Bruxt. I'm going to give an Achana shiur, and then we drafted someone to talk about his topic, which is Negeya, specifically this year for those who are Shomer Bruxt, for those who are not. And I don't know, we have an even split, I'm not able to keep track of everybody's different minhagim, but if Tefillin the Chalamayid is weighted towards wearers, I assume that overall in the Ashkenazi part of Klal Yisrael, I don't know, I'm not sure, but the significant part of Klal Yisrael, including myself, including Rav Mordechai, who do not eat shroya on Pesach. And we began looking at this on Monday. It's voluminous halachic literature. I use that term, I guess, because that's my, pseudo-scholarly side. I hope you'll forgive me. And Lakewood wouldn't go over big, but there's a lot of voluminous halachic writings on the brachas, of which we'll be able to touch on in the first part of the shiur only a bit. Second part of the shiur will focus on Inyana D'Yoma. What a beautiful picture of Rabbi Adler. Inyana D'Yoma. Why Inyana D'Yoma? So as I mentioned, and as we'll see this year, because of the fact that Achar Pesach falls on Shabbos, there are other issues related to Achilas Shroya, which will be a little bit of a insight into Hilchos Yantif. Okay, so today we are learning. Thank you for patience. Remind me, we didn't make a poster, right? So we'll just put it up this way that we're learning L'zei Chanishmas. Got to give me the name again. Pesach, you went too fast. Let me go back on the chat. Hold on. Taiba Basr Tzvi was the mother of Yidenu of Ramnis and Pearl. He is one of the senior executives of the entire project commission, who's been so helpful in allowing this platform to continue for yesterday, so us for 2 years. So may this effort on behalf of her Bat's Torah be Ischus for Neshama, both. Hope you won't mind me mentioning both Pearl's mother and father were nifter during the height of the corona 2 years ago, in that terrible, horrible month of Nisan, at the beginning of year, that we suffered. So many of Tyra Eden were carbonites of whatever various that we did to beguile that Megefa. And it was a very challenging and trying time. So these next 10 days, I believe next week, Pearl has not one but 2 yard sites. He said Shiva consecutively, if I remember correctly. So we're learning Zecha Nishmasa. We're also learning Schus L'Refuah Shalema of Yosef Kalman Ben Chava Frumit. Should be Zeich L'Refuah Shalema. Okay, let's put up the Master Gebrach's file. I'm sorry, I cannot give you Knedlach. If we were learning in person, I would arrange that. There's plenty of matzo meal around in totally in Klal Yisrael. It's available for the cheap price of $35 for a pound, I think. Maybe slightly less. I can't remember whether they give you a discount in the matzo meal or not. But of course, the trick today will be finding a kitchen somewhere that some crazy ballbuster will allow you to make a knedlach. That's not likely. So let me learn in without knedlach. I'm going to go back to the Seidos. The first part of the shiur of us is the mנהג of Le'eser Shroya on Pesach. And then, as I said, at around 12 o'clock, maybe 2 minutes later, we'll switch over to everybody's favorite beloved topic, the Hainu Knedlach. Okay, so last time, yes, scheduling purposes, today's Donnerstick. So giving you a rare night off this week. Anybody want to hear some good Shabbos Gadol? Feel free to email Pesach. I'll send you the link, which I am doing that tonight. If you need a vacation from me, we'll reconvene on Sunday to hear from Rabbi Weiss. I assume you're going to get Chalakim of his Shabbos Gadol Drasha. We also, after Rabbi Weiss, will be hearing from the guy Rabbi Brudny on Inyan de Yoma. It's on Sunday. Monday will be a Chana. Tuesday will be a shir by Hagar Zev Smith and Menhagim of Pesach, including Shroya. Wednesday, Rabbi Kalis will appear in his last shir Dazman, trying to keep his kids out of the room or whatever. And on Thursday, there will be a shir by Hagar of Shal Katz of Lakewood. I'm trying to make order of all the various shiurim, which, as you know, in the last X years, probably 20 years, has become a big topic of discussion. How big was the Chofetz Chaim's Becher? Okay, as you know, the Chofetz Chaim's Becher allegedly is floating around in the Haredi world, and it is a lot smaller than Bechers some of us and the Bnei Torah use. And of course, we all know the story with the matzahs. At the time, nobody ate 3 matzahs for a kazayas. And Baruch Hashem, Achshadara, and the Klal Yisrael eating matzahs. What could be wrong with eating matzahs? As we heard, every single bite. As they say in Eretz Yisrael, I think the phrase is, right, Rabbi Eliezer, maximum, which means the downside is you're being Mekayim, if not being Mekayim after the first kazayas, behaseva, b'kavana. Not so easy, Rabbi say. We did not do a seva this year, but I will tell you that a seva is not as simple as it sounds. It's not just like going like this. There are, like everything else in halacha, there are nitunim, there are aspects in a seva. You got to learn something hard, try to find a chair with armchair, etc., etc. Can't go into that now because we'll get sidetracked. No pun intended. We'll have to go left. We'll become leftists. For one night, we are all leftists. But if you eat it b'seva and the kavana, who knows what kind of kavana us regular Jews have? Ranging from l'shem matzah's mitzvah, or l'shem baruch teich l'matzah, is ranging to the Arizal kavanas on the Zayir, which is nistera from regular normal people, and everything else in between. So if you are Makayim that mitzvah, one-time mitzvah of the year of the Raisa, then that's great. Any matzah after that, according to the Goyin, inures to your credit of Achilas Matzah Kol Shiva. So why not? I would say, without going into that aspect now, because it's not the topic of the shir, that maybe there is such a svara that if you're eating l'shem the matzah chayva, that achila even goes past the first kazayas. And as I said, that's already a lam svara, which we'll leave for another time. Okay, let's go to the Brooks file. So we had 4 Gemaras, which I will quickly mention without learning them with you inside. The main one is the Gemara in Daf Lamed Tes, which commenting in the Mishnah, which says, you're not allowed to be shayra of Mursin if you can get the hello. Yes, Rabbi Parkov. The name of Hill Zaks was small share. I grew up with the Zaks Rashbacha on the west side of Manhattan. There was the Shemrim of the Messiahs of the Chofetz Chaim. I had a Hill Zaks, Colonel Vracha, Adam Gadol, Adam Chashvad Moikia as the Heinegel of the Chofetz Chaim in my house for Shabbos. So I was like to that. And we had extended conversations for Shtetzach about the Chofetz Chaim. And like every other dope in Klal Yisrael, I asked him about the Becher, and he agreed without going into who actually has the Becher. He agreed that the Becher was smaller than the normative Bechers floating around now. I couldn't pin him down on the ounces, but everybody knows this raid from Misafa from the superficially. But you need to know, like everything else, the purpose of our Kail is to know things a little bit in depth, which hopefully we will get next week. I do not know yet which angle he'll come from, but I'm assuming he's going to come from the angle of whatever. If that in fact is Rabbi Pearl, I don't know whether it's Rabbi Pearl or Rabbi Shapiro, but if it is Rabbi Pearl, you should let me know, because I see there's two Rabbi Nissen Pearls. If it is him, then we're learning L'zech Nishmas Imech Marasech, whatever the right grammar is. Okay, put the Gemara back on, please. Someone, Pesach, Mordechai, please. The Gemara in Daf Lam Tes Beis. The Gemara says that you're not allowed to soak morsin, and in the B'teicha Dvarim, the Gemara says a very important principle, that something that's afui and maybe mavushal, depending on what status is, cannot be machmitz. Let's focus on the afui, something that is. Okay, Pesach, are you around? I see the chicken here. Pesach, Rav Mordechai is temporarily unavailable. Is it possible for you to take over the screen sharing of the Gebrux file? If not, I'm going to have to do this orally, which is not as good. The question here was, did he remember his Zayda? Gottesman was nifter in 33. Vilzak was nifter about 5 years ago, somewhere in his mid-80s. So do the math, everybody. He was nifter 5 years ago. Let's say it would be 90 now. This is 22. That means he was born in 32. That means he was born just at the time the Gottesman was nifter. So I would say, am I right about that, Rabbi Said? Did I do the math accurately? I don't think he was 90. I think he was in his mid-80s. High 80s could be, let's say he was 88. So he was nifter 4 years ago. So then this year he would be 92 now. So it means he was born in 30, right? So at best he was a little child when the Chavetz Chaim was nifter. Nifter was in 32 or 33? 33. You got to open up your mic, Shlomo, because I can't hear.
I think 33.
Right. So then at best he would have been a little child. So the answer is no. Okay. I don't know. Maybe a 3-year-old can remember the Zayda too. I mean, I don't remember my Zayda. My earliest memories of my Zayda was from, I guess, 5, 6. I guess. I think the psychologists say your earliest memories go back to 5. I dimly remember Aaron's Levaya. I remember being in a crush, like all little children are scared of crushes. I remember being in a crush. At the time it was Lower East Side, and I didn't know it was Lower East Side, Pesach. And I was, I think, 5 at the time. So I guess you can remember what you saw at 5 years old, basically. Anyway, I'm ad-libbing here, hoping up the Gemaras come up here. Playing the amateur psychologist, which, believe me, I don't know anything about. But the Gemara is not coming up. Okay, so Pesach, are you there? Please talk to me. No. All right, everybody say, I now see that next month we are going to have to remind another screen share. In fact, if anybody wants to volunteer now, I guess I can spend 5 minutes cooking up the requirements to send it to you with the screen share, just in case we can't get anything up. Second Gemara. So this is a Gemara Lehatera because it talks about Afui not being able to be machmitz. The second Gemara Lehatera was the Gemara in Daf Mem Amud Beis, where it says Rava Maskana allowed.
No, number 2 is Mem Aleph.
No, I understand. I'm going 1, 4, 2, and 3.
Okay.
Okay, sorry. Number 4. I'm grouping the 2 Heterim, then I'm grouping the 2 Isurim. The 2 Heterim are. And the second after is Gemara Membeis, where Rav Papi and Rava allowed the Nachtum and the Rosh Galusa to put Kemach into Kimcha Daf Shuna. B'chayk Rashi and Tais is exactly what he allowed them to do, but whatever it is, whichever exactly what it was, he allowed them to put it into the pot. And l'chayra, why is this not a problem with Shroya? See, not a problem with Shroya. And then there are 2 Gemaras, which are the Isura. One is that we are cheshish that we're not allowed to bake 2 clothes one next to the other because we're worried that one will emit water onto the other one. So what? They're baked. And the second is the Gemara of Yitzin Baroke Kasharoi Ubmivushal Shaloi Nimuach. And the Gemara there apparently seems to say Leiv Mushal Lei Lechem Nikri. So Rashi said, so it's already baked. So if it's baked, This is not obviously exactly on point because, as I said, there are various types of statuses of mevushal, but we see there is such a thing of being chayshesh. Something could be mevutal, mitaris ofwa, even after the fact. There are two rishonim that we put on the table, even though the Welt assumes that Shroya is an Isser, which was became Nahug after the time of Rishonim and the time of the earlier Achrayna and the Bikur, the Magen Avraham, and that's the Dora, etc. But lo and behold, we have a Raven and a Rav Yah. Raven first. The Raven is his lashon is that afuya and farful, whatever that is not chimutz b'shari, and they say there are those who don't do it, and there could be that they're right, but for the wrong reason. They don't do it because they think that maybe it'll become chametz. B'lahi, that the Raven can't become chametz, so they don't do it because the real reason is their fathers didn't do it. And there's many thousands of examples of this in the Torah where people do things because their fathers did it, but they don't really know the reason. The fathers didn't do it because of sheitam matzah b'fihem. And then all of a sudden the Raven finishes by saying, that you should not do it with kemach. You'll make a mistake. You'll make a mistake. Toiv las is farful, so yasa gam kemach. Farful is made out of bake. Matzah meal. Comes along the Raven says, but wait a second, maybe you'll made it out of kemach. So here, lo and behold, the lady in Izmir was preceded by the Raven in Germany. So it's not just this dumb lady who caused this whole mess in Klal Yisrael. Kadmei Rabbi Seinu Rishonim, the Ravia has a similar lashon, and he says, Shayimei Pesach Sharv Yesh Machmirin V'loy Asul Mitli V'Chumer Shel Hevelhi. Now, if you read this Rav Yah the way it is, the Rav Yah says the Chumer Shel Hevel. So this is a very strong language for the let's get our language straight. The Gebraks next to the people who eat Gebraks, to the Chveiswas and the Machmir are the people who don't eat Gebraks. The L'chayr, this language in the Rav Yah is Lefanenu, which is Chumer Shel Hevel, who wants to be a Hevel person. So this is a very strong indication that it is mutter, and so far the teams here are, I know Rabbi Steiner and I have been slightly sparring about, who's winning here because we don't have a scoreboard. But I would say for the Gemaras, it's mashma basically latera. And now the two Rishonim, we know there is such a legitimate, can't say they're illegitimate, whether they know the right reason or not, a legitimate group of machmirim. And the first reason to be machmir, as we saw, is because we don't, the reason is because maybe asal michlafi, asal mitay, which is everybody agrees that afui is mutter. You can produce absolute 100% edis that this is fully afui, it's mutter because it cannot physically become chametz, no way, and therefore it should be mutter. Problem is that maybe asal michlafi, and as I said, preceding the lady from Izmir is a language in the Rishonim that maybe you will put kemach into a tafshel, not realizing that the only heter is matzah meal.
So in that case, the lady who she saw was using matzah meal. So people who take big piece of matzah and drop it into the soup, that shouldn't be a problem.
No.
What are you going to mix with?
No, because even assuming we know we have a problem, as Bichad says, who says you can make your own gzeiros? But if Rabbanim, such as the Knesset Dela, came along and asked something, you, HaRav Schneider in Detroit in the year Tafshim Pei Beis, have no right to override and say, I'm holding this and I'm holding that. Because that's just not the way Chumras work. If there's a minhag in Klal Yisrael that was taken on by a significant group in Klal Yisrael last night in our West Side Kel Chabura, we had a whole long discussion and everybody attacked me because I innocently, in the shir you'll hear in a moment, about the Knedlach. I initially brought a Ramah in Taflan Zion, which says we don't eat tzimukim. Tzimukim is the raisins. Why don't we eat raisins as Pesach? Why? Anybody know why we don't eat raisins as Pesach? So,
they used to put flour on
we don't have Pesach because we're worried And here's the lesson of the Ramah. We'll hear it later. We're worried that that some kemach got onto the raisins. Comes along Rabbi Snyder, and this is the Ramah. This Ramah goes all the way back to early Minhag Ashkenaz, not the Gemara, but Ashkenaz is Ashkenaz. Here we go. Where is this? I mean, the Ramah is very, very busy in Hilchos Pesach, glossing the Mechaber, because a huge group of chumras were postulated by Rabbi Seinu Balei HaTaisvis, and the Ramah. Here we go. The Ramah Taf Samach Zayin Ches talks about we don't need dvash or certain types of dvash. We don't need honey on Pesach. Why? Not for now. And then he says, what about med? Anyway, Ute'enim, Yaveshim, Anavim, Yaveshim, raisins. Totally been a Makaimais, Yesh Machmirin, Yesh La, Ulakach, Nogu, Medinas, Ilu Lahachmer. So I innocently read this Ramah. I know we don't need raisins in my house, so I assume everybody doesn't need raisins. Of course, with the internet today, no such a thing. Everybody knows everything. So, these guys in the Chabur love nothing else besides catching me. So they pushed the buttons, and all of a sudden it came out that Chabad eats raisins. Okay. So why does Chabad eat raisins? Because the Tanya decided he's not being makabel this chumrah very much. If you're the Baal Tanya, you can do that. If you're us, you can't do that. So therefore, you can't. You don't need. You have not chesh shroya. So to you can do whatever you want. But I, who am chesh shroya, do not have the ability to say this yes, this not. I have to go with the mainstream of the chumrah. Now you'll say, well, you're contradicting yourself. Oh, I didn't say that. Remember, you're contradicting yourself because you're saying that in your family they're not so crazy shroya. I think I said this. I don't remember if I did. Did I say in places? And the minhag of my family is on shroya is that we don't make knedlach, we don't cook things in hot order. But if something, if a piece of matzah, loyim by the major heter that if putting in your mouth, totally mutter. Even next level heter. I'm going out of sequence here because I'm going to get to this later. But next level heter is that if something ends up wet, you put it in your mouth right away. Also, I don't say most. A lot of people are mako. Can't say most. Because every time I say most, I get into trouble, because how do I know? But a lot of people are mako because just no time for it to come chametz. So there you go. So that's an example of your spara or whatever. And then there are even people such as, I don't know, my family, my father, whatever, that we're not crazy paranoid about this. And if there's a piece of matzah and there's liquid on the table, which there is in every single house in Klal Yisrael during the course of the Seder, how could there not be? Right? At some point, unless say, you have a place, you have a French, what do they call French service guy going around wiping the table every few minutes. How could some, for many years I specialized in managing to make Havdalah with the dal cases because you want it to be full. But it's okay. So then we use bowls, and like everybody else does, we figured it out. You can't just use a becher; it falls. The entire tablecloth becomes totally red. All these things that everybody knows about their own nihug of the Seder, which is not the cleanest endeavor in Klal Yisrael. It's modeled after the old Greco-Roman feasts. I'm sure they were not so, but Bekitzer, if something falls into a little bit of liquid on a table, we're not going to go crazy and brings the walls of Jericho down. So there are people who are. So there are different nihugim within the chaim, within the framework of this. But that doesn't mean every person can decide, Razvikas, why do I have to do Ramah says we don't eat Razvikas the Pesach because of Kevach? What do you mean? The dough makes raisins, I don't know who makes raisins with OU Hechsher? There's no Kevach in there because the FDA doesn't allow, or whoever, FDA, who controls the food in this country? The FDA?
FDA.
Huh?
Probably
yes.
FDA.
Somebody has cleanliness things, and therefore there's no kemach in there. Why should there be kemach in the dough raisins? Okay, so then there goes the Ramah's chumrah. Doesn't work that way. But that's it. One Sunday became a chumrah in Ashkenaz in the 12th century. You're stuck. Where are kidneys? What do you mean kidneys? You're telling me that there's going to be chitim in today's rice. What do you mean? The rice comes from Bangkok. And whoever, Mr. Benz, who was it that gives us the rice, has no incentive whatsoever to mix chitim into the rice. Okay, so kidneys has been a chumrah for 1,000 years. Let's get rid of the kidneys. Doesn't work this way. Back to the sources here. So that's just what being a religious Jew is all about. When Menhagim come, and this is Gemara Pesachim, when Menhagim come mushrash and Klal Yisrael, they have the force of halacha. There are different types of Menhagim. There are different Menhagim in the Gemara, Menhagim in the Gainim, Menhagim in the Rishainim, Menhagim in the Achrayim, Menhagim in geography, Menhagim in your father. All sorts of different grades of Menhagim, and it is, of course, important to know not to mix this up. I've had the pleasure and privilege of learning with Balchums over the decades in my area, and one of the harder things to do is to try to explain to them. It takes years for them to figure this out. That the different, that burning the lulav with the chametz is not as important a minhag as chveis as kidneys. This is a very important minhag. I'll give you a string of 20 other things. Burning the chametz with the lulav with the chametz is a nice thing of Tanish Ma'akiv, as you all know. So I had taught that this is a minhag. Okay, the different types of have. Back to our sources. So I'm gonna have to be makatzer here because we don't have a huge amount of time, so I'm going to go fast here by side because I wanted you to know the basics here. So we said Latera on the heter side. The chief Reish Madam Latera is the Goin. The HaRav. The HaRav says, I see we still do not have any screen sharing. This is highly unusual that neither of the two of my chaverim should be available. The first time it happened 2+ years. Anybody know how to screen share?
You need to be in control of it to do that.
And not on my other shiurim, maybe because I'm in control. Okay, I got it. You need to be in control to do that. Shine. So everybody listen. So the HaRav and the Goin says the following: Mutter lechol macholim tavshilim lasui mikemach matzah knei lach ve'ein lachash v'nat chayshes shema nisher makom sheinefayav. So all of a sudden, till now we only had this chashash. Now what was this chashash of miti, and where does it come from? So I learned with you a Pri Chadash, which mentioned the story of the Knesset Gdaila, presumably in Izmir, story of a lady, and she's chaver was making nedlach out of matzah meal. Her friend came in, neighbor came in for whatever reason, and saw she was making nedlach. Said, "Oh, great! This is new food that I did not yet discover." She went home. I'm going to surprise my husband and make him a good tafshil for Pesach. And she used raw flour. And in order to prevent this from happening, they will geyser on being mevashel matzah meal. This was a big problem because Mechat tasted to make zeretz. There's a million reasons, a million ways in Chas v'Shalom some should be nichshol noiser chametz. Why the punkt is zera, and that's what the Pri Chadash says. Mechat tasted that all of a sudden out of nowhere we're going to start inventing chumras. And as a person, even though you're Knesset Gdaila, you can't do that. Then it brings rice and kach, and that was the second prong of the Isser. The guy was not chayshish for this. He was also not chayshish for, that's the first prong of that. For the second prong of the Isser, which is, and there are some different variants of this question. One is, the first problem is that maybe an air pocket will develop in the matzah, and the heat of the oven, which ranges, as you heard, from anywhere from 850 degrees in the machine matzah to 1200, I think we said, right? Did we hear a number higher than 1200? I don't think.
The article had 1300 yesterday about the soft matzah, and the soft matzah goes about 840, the Sephardi.
Right, and the hand is
about 1300, yeah.
Okay, 13. So 1300 is there's a lot of heat, packing a lot of heat, as they say, but as hot as it is, if there's a crust, we have to have direct application. Look at this, Shalom Yisrael. We have to have direct application. How did you get this, Shalom Yisrael? Look at this. Okay, so listen, Shalom Yisrael, you just did a dangerous thing, because now that I know you know how to screen share, you are now the Gava Gabbai Rishon on screen sharing after the two bosses. So Ashrecha, fresh from the Kaisel Plaza, I have the screen share. Okay, the screen share is going to slow me down actually. So let me talk about it outside first. That these are Gemaras, so let's freeze it here for a moment. The second problem is either an air pocket, which prevents the heat from directly getting applied to the flour, and therefore that part will never be baked properly, and therefore it's not ufly. Once it's not ufly, you have kemach. Once it's kemach, everybody agrees you can't put kemach into water. Or the second variant of that is that there'll actually be somehow in the baking process something went wrong. Could 200,000 pounds of matzah. Something could go wrong, and there will be flour left on top of the matzah. Forget about the fancy air pocket. There'll be flour left on top of the matzah, which is simply not baked. The flour will come dislodge off the matzah into the water, and chas v'shalom, there will be a chashash chimutz.
Then you got to move fast with korach because the wet lettuce is wet.
Listen, you got to move fast, and the mitzvah halayla, I guess, is part of the shiurim. The shiurim is, of course, the chil's pras of the mitzvah halayla. You got to stuff these matzahs, however many you're going to use, and whatever type you're going to use, into your mouth, leaning to your left, and with an X. The X can be as little as 2 minutes. Not so easy, right? Especially you want to do like some cipher, which is chew everything first in your mouth and be bailei in one shot, which many Torah machmor for. So you got to sit there. I mean, this is not a malacha. These are from, I found the chil's matzah not to be the simplest thing in the world once you learn your halachas, right? You got to sit there. You want to do it right. You got to chew everything up, the kazayis in your mouth, fill your mouth full totally, and then be belay at once. You're going to sit there like the old style way that we all did when we were kids and just eat it leisurely. Maybe you're going to won't get a matzah in the chil's pras. It's not likely, because if you're a normal person, and we have normal shiur, because 2 minutes is the most chomedik shiur. The cipher did it that way, but the cipher also had a shiur and pras all the way up to 9 minutes. So let's take. I don't know what everybody is going to be machmor on in my house, where I try to tell everybody to try to eat it on the clock. I don't make them look at watches, but they all watch. They used to watch my father, and then they all watch me, and I try to finish the main two zaysim within 3 minutes. Not so easy. That's a mitzvah deraisa. So who said mitzvahs are easy? So a karach is the same thing. Karach is a mitzvah rabbanan, but we are rabbinic Jews, so it has the same import. It doesn't change our nihug, and therefore, unless you're a chayla, unless you just can't handle it, then it's a mitzvah rabbanan, so it gets easier. But you got to eat it with it in a couple of minutes, so it's not going to become chametz in the water of the leaves. Besides, who said the leaves have to be wet? You decided the leaves are wet. Get this French waiter guy, Igor, some Ukrainian refugee, to wipe it off, to wipe off your lettuce. Doesn't have to be wet. Yes, it could be wet. Okay, Rabbi says, so the guy was not makbidness, and he says the rice is not goraf and kloyos. Kloyos is the baked wheat, not machmetz. This is a big machlekes in the Rishonim, which I'm just going to reference to you. Rashi and Rambam hold that kemach koloi, baked kemach, is the same as if it would be fully baked as ufui, and it is not machmetz. So the going holds you're not choishish for the kemach koloi is not going to get baked. Why should I be choishish? Phrase will come back to. Why should I be choishish for some rachadika shach? Now, there is a person who is choishish, and this is the Mugger of Ram, brought here on page 2. The Mugger of Ram in Tafman Hay says, Kasav Atur Medagim Leif Lechza Kolka the Pesach Shem Yisaravi Mashu. Where is this? No, it's the wrong Mugger of Ram. The Mugger of Ram is on the bottom of page 2. The bottom of page 2. Yeah, right there, right there. You see the Ram? No, you went too fast. See where the hand is? The tzarchi in the snuba diab Michael or Asroich Shada Rashi matter filachatchil can go perception around naftil in the matter shinoishma kama. No. Rav Shlomo, pick up the page. I'll have to get our terminology straight. It took me about a year to figure this out with the other guys. Perfect. You see where the hand is on the right?
On the right, yeah.
Okay, but those two lines. The second line already. Nafkamil in matshal by chemical nefa. Commercial gossip. Achach nasnu leroitum shukama the matzias lahach ma'ach shamatza mafsekes bina kemach va'oy. There you go. The matzah itself is a natural mafsik between the kemach and the or, a pocket. You have the matzah, the crust of the matzah, baked, and there's kemach in between. So the Ma'aral was machadish this iser. Forget about the hachlofa. The matzah is mafseches, and therefore it's not like kemach kalui. It's like chitim. Chitim we already know is aser, but the guy holds no kemach kalui is afoy male. There's no chash or chimutz. If you look at the Chazon Ish says that the ikar tam of makilim and achilas shroya is because we are not chayshish v'smogin Avram. We're not chayshish that the kemach will not be properly nefa. Not like the HaRav. The HaRav it's mashma. The heter is because even if there is kemach, it's dinam the kemach and kaloi. But that doesn't solve the problem of the Magen Avram. What about the air pockets of the flour? So the Chazon Ish says we simply are not. The makilim, most of you guys or half of you guys, we simply are not chayshish for something that is so rochaik that an air pocket of flour is going to develop, and we're not chayshish for this chorn Magen Avram. But it's a Magen Avram, if I say the mekanish shavek machin. The Shari Tshuva brought in the Mishmur on page 5 says the Mishmur sent you the Shari Tshuva, and he says this svara. It's on page 5. Here's the Bichadsh we saw already. Here's the HaRav we saw already. Shari Tshuva on page 5, I think this is page 4, says, I'm a Shari Tshuva. The Mitzvah did in Lachos was that. He's talking about Chumash Shroya. This is page 5, yes. This is the Shulchan HaRav which I referenced. Where's the on page 5? Okay, there we go. Shari Tshuva, the Mishabura. Page 5. Here you go. Last two lines. Okay, Shlomo is still learning how to do this, and he's having fun. Look in the last two lines. Pick up the page a little bit. You can. No, the other way. Pick up means in my freeze. Okay. I don't know if you're able to make things bigger. That's already asking a lot of you.
It's asking too much.
But yeah. Okay. Fine. Tafasta maruba lay tafasta. So the bottom two lines there, everybody's gonna have to crunch in. Bottom two lines says, I'm also gonna crunch close to the screen. It takes too long. I'm sorry, Tshuva, Mitzvah, Medin, in Lachos was that. We're talking about Shroya. Okay, Mr. Maisha, you're right. Forget it. It's gonna take long. Why should I be, what am I, world brisker to the highest degree? I have to be possibility that something can happen. You never can eat anything. Maybe that's better. Okay, but you gotta eat matzahs. You don't have to eat anything all year, generally, except for Shabbos and Yantiv. And every Kippur. We make very thin matzah, so it can be an air pocket in a thin matzah. What does that mean? So Rabbi say you're not allowed to make up chumras. As Vichad said, make up chumras, that's no good. First of all, making up chumras is in the hands of Gedali Yisrael. Only Gedali are allowed to make up chumras. And I don't know, could somebody tell me on halacha chumra that was decided from on top? And since the war, I can't remember one. Yes, Klal Yisrael decided to copy other people's chumras.
Glatt, the Hungarians brought over from Europe, no? Glatt kosher?
But first of all, no one imposed, the summer Rebbe did not get down and say that Snyder has to eat glatt kosher meat. He didn't say that. I didn't say you're a chas v'shalom not from if you don't. And by bringing their standards, and Klal Yisrael was free to choose. Nobody asked anybody to drink Kol Yisrael. All of a sudden, starting, I don't know what's out there in the Gulil that you live in, but in New York, I don't know. When I was a kid, there was plenty of Cholabakim around. When I was a kid, there was plenty of Aleph Hamish Yidden drank Cholabakim because Jewish milk was much more expensive, harder to get. My neighborhood was very hard to get, and spoiled the next day, as you all know. Okay, Baruch Hashem, they solved the last problem, and with something called refrigerators. I don't know whatever that is. And they have not solved the cost problem. Still cost 30% more than regular milk or whatever, or more. I don't know. I Pesach somehow, and you know what goes on. So Klal Yisrael decided to be machmer and so on, but there's no edict. We don't have people who can make edicts for all Klal Yisrael ma'od that since post-war we have 15,000 different edicts or eidos gathered everywhere. So I'm going to tell Sephardi can't eat soft matzahs, not shaykh. That's not a good dimion. You want to pay upon yourself. My niyug, the last 20 years has changed too. My shiurim have gotten bigger. Why? Because that's the way everybody's doing it. And my matzahs have gotten more chomer. Why? Because you all know the reasons. So, but nobody imposed this upon me. I don't have to do it. I can fight it. You know, there are people who love fighting these things. I'm going to go now to politics, but that's in our province here, certainly not this year. Okay, so the Mishmur gives you these two hetters, and they must say this. If those of us who do not eat gebraks, you can't scream at us that we created this chumrah. Interestingly enough, fascinatingly enough, you can take this for whatever it was. I did not ask this Rav Zaks. I had a list of things that I came prepared, and somehow this one I overlooked. But the Eidos Chaim himself did not eat gebraks. As a chumrah, even though here in Mr. Brewer is telling you he did. So what's the stira? You know, the Rav loves to find steers between stories and what's written in the Mishnah Berurah. It's not such a stira. Rabbi Kaplan had such a famous stira on the desserts, if you remember. Here, it's a stira here. The Mishnah Berurah says not only that he has to find a heter to allow him to be machmer and shroya. So Chav Chaim didn't need shroya, as I is. Chav Chaim was allowed to choose whatever he wanted, whatever chomer he wanted to do. But there's a story that Chash of a guest, I don't remember who. Well, first of all, they asked Chav Chaim, the Gain was not backward. Chaim Voloshin traveled all the way to Vilna to be with the Gain on Pesach, just to see if the Gain ate, I have to say this, to see if the Gain ate shroya. He did, obviously. He came back to Voloshin, and he says, the next year, I guess, and he told the Rebbetzin Volozhiner, I don't know if Chaim had a last name, I don't think so. They all had last names. I mean, the guy had a last name too. Anybody know what the guy's last name allegedly was?
Kramer. Yes.
So if Graham had a last name, then Chaim Volozhiner had a last name, right? By definition. Am I right? Chaira? Shapiro? I don't know. Anyway, no, Shapiro is later. So nicht. But he came home and he told Rebbetzin, Mir Essen Narkneidlach in this house, and all the family they grew up was Zicham on Leidach. Allegedly, when they asked the Chavetz Chaim, the guy was not makbid, so why are you being makbid? He says, if he says, give me the guy's matzahs and I will eat shroya too. Meaning the guy's matzahs come along with that implicit hechsher that's absolutely 100% awfully can never become chametz. My matzahs are not that way. Anyway, but for everybody else, he was Meirabah, else means his family. They ate knedlach in the family. How that was reconciled, I guess they used the kalim, they used everything to make knedlach. Sometimes just didn't eat the knedlach. Didn't mean I can't imagine they had separate kalim from them. I cannot imagine. I'd be willing to put down $1 million if they didn't have separate kalim. And there's a story, a very chashuv guest came for Yom Sheni, and the Chavetz Chaim was mitzav the Rebbetzin, of whom there are a lot of pictures of, including famous pictures where she was airbrushed out of the picture of the Rebbetzin. He told the Rebbetzin to make knedel for the guest, and because Simchas Yantav is a very important thing. And if Simchas Yantav brings Simcha to you, we already went through this whole svara with Simchas Yantav. I already explained that those of us who do not eat shroya have an incredible amount of Simchas Yantav on I did not, one second, credit master was Yantav on Achron Shal Pesach when we actually get to the Knedlach, because it's it's anticipation. Okay, so here we learn new things. We learn new things every day, and Rabbi Snyder claims that the Chaim Lodge's name was Chaim Itzkowitz. I never heard of that. If it's true, I assume it must be Gevikid or something like that. But okay, in Kabbalah sounds like an old Irish name, but Itzkowitz, I guess it was Russian. So there you go. You learn something new every single day. Now there
and his great grandson was Shimon Peres.
No comment.
Okay.
Okay, so just in the few minutes that we have here, I'm going to divide this up, I guess, into the two shiur, a little bit of this one, that one. So Lamaisa, those who are machmer are chayshus to one of these two kshashos, either the achlufi or the kemach up. The kemach on top or in the middle. Machzah shekel follows the Magen Avraham, says yesh lahachmel l'bal nefesh. They're not to make a tafshel from these matzahs because l'fa'amim ain't kol kemach nilosh was gobbled properly and so gabi isa, and we explained that these are the two problems. The gabi the isa, which is a small chash, emsa isa, which according to the Matzah is a big chash. I don't know exactly which sits.
What's cooking?
What? Your thing is on. Okay, just let me finish here with the das, the bukhar for the das. The reason why, I should put your if you're talking on the phone, please close Rabbi Snyder, close your audio. Thank you. The Reish Hamadah Hama Oisrim, the reason why Chassidim do not because they knew the Rav in the time it didn't exist, because Zalman Milad, Baltanya, very strongly in the famous tshuva that's printed in the Shulchan Aruch HaRav was machmer. This is really the first Makar in the Chassidish Belt. Obviously, it was the second daughter of Chassidim, Talmud of the Magid, second daughter, third daughter, however you want to count it. And he says, Beferish, in the Ha'aris to the Tshuva, it says clearly that this Chumrah is from Rabbi Seinu b'Mezrich. Mezrich is a little station, probably just a gas station now in the Ukraine, that has no meaning in the history of the world except for the fact that the Maggid lived there. And interestingly enough, we have another steer in that nugget, because the Baal Shem Tov himself was not Nizar Gabrux. You'll say if the Baal Shem Tov wasn't, how could Chassidim be Nizar Gabrux? The answer is the Baal Shem Tov was not Kaveya halachais. The nihug of the Chassidish movement, as you all probably know, if you're not a Chassid, was done by the Baal Shem Tov's chief of staff, the Maggid of Mezrich, who stole back the delicate and sensitive interplay between halacha and Chassidus. So apparently, according to the Baltanya, the whether or not the Baal Shem Tov ate Knei L'chanat didn't matter, because the Maggid Rabbi Seinu b'Mezrich did. The reason for this is because the Shulchan Aruch explicates in that tshuva is that techen is that, as we said, maybe the matzahs were not nilosh enough, and therefore there'll be kemach was nishar on the matzah that was nefa koroi, and it'll come the chimutz. This itself is a complicated machlokes in the Rishonim, which we didn't have time to go into. The Rabbi Yerucham and the Smak, which are brought in the Beis Yosef here on page 2, and I urge you all to go back and review yourself about kemach that was nikla. Whether we're chayshisham, it'll be yachmitz, because we're worried about it's going to come into maga with some water around. Magen Avraham is machmer, says the Altanya. The Magen Avraham is machmer. He had another reason to be machmer because of this supposed hefsek, the air pocket whatever you want to call it, the hefsek between the kemach in the oil. So this raises an issue. If that's the reason that the heat did not get to the flour, so why should it be usher if the flour is on top of the matzah? Everybody say, remember, there's two types of yisurim. One is the chlufe that the lady won't know and she'll dump a whole flour bag into the water to make knedel. That's problem number one. Problem number two, with marsayin or whatever the issue is, that is rooted all the way in the Rishayim, whether it's a good minhag or it's hevel. We discussed this. The second problem is rooted in the achrayim. Problem is that the achrayim are actually based on a machlekes in the Rishayim about kemach, beit kemach. Is there a chash chimut or not? They say to bring this all the machlekes in the Rishayim. The Magen Avraham is masik lahachmer because of the air pocket. The problem is, if you're going to say that the problem is kemach on top of the thing, so then the heat reached the kemach. Why should we assume that's going to be achbetz? Balatanya, let's just close here with looking at the Balatanya inside. Balatanya is brought here on page 4. Scroll back. I go in Rav Shlomo. There you go. There you go. And the Beraita brings the famous Arizal that someone who's nizr mimashal Pesach moved to place yechta kol Shana. Unfortunately, there must be mashals that have Pesach of chametz in at least in my house because I'm not muftach, so I won't be chayta kol Shana. There you go. And aftach of the Arizal. That's why I was so machmer and chametz. Baltanya in his Tuva, as I said, about that most of our talking about time, of course, are from the Shulchan HaRav, which is structured on the Simanim of Shulchan Aruch. But the Shulchan HaRav also has tuvas, not many, but he has tuvas. And in one of those tuvas, which is Siman Vav, he talks about matzah, Isser Bishul Matzah Shenuspira, and he says like this: Bemes Kigam. If you don't have a marker, okay, that's really too fancy. Elisha, we decided, courtesy of President Biden, we're getting you a grant to go to screen sharing school, and there you will learn how to enlarge and how to mark.
I'll drop out of school as soon as you let me.
I'm not letting you. What do you mean? You're going to get a student loan and you're stuck for life. You'll be paying it back until 140. So. Why you say, what do you mean, what happened to 120? We have 20% inflation. Okay, anyway, so the Shulchan HaRav here said, beautiful, look at that. Did you do that, Yellow? I didn't see.
Yes, I did.
Okay, everybody clap for Shlomo Moshe, who is now learned a new fach in his young age. So the Shulchan HaRav said it's not Asur Medina. Come on, Machmer. Since everybody in the world of Chassidus wants a bracha, I guess even the Misnagda would want this, a bracha from the Balatanya from Vestish. One of the leading lights in modern Jewish history. So why not be Mekayim this machmer tavo bracha? Okay. There are chumras which are matmiya, and we don't allow those chumras because, as we said, asulei kula. We don't want to invest the people with the right to start creating chumras. But here there is a timer Rabbah, and he says the Rishayim hold like there are Rishayim like the Smach and the Meruchim brought the Beis Yosef and the Pri Chodesh Kemach and Nikla with a Choshesh Shemo leBashal Shapir. In this case, it would be a question of Shemo and Nefa Shapir. If you look here, when the second has the Chetchila Moed the Asra Filu Kemach. Matzah litin b'marak, and on the third, and he says it's different. Why you'll find that this chumrah is not noheg in the Deris Rishayim. So why not? So where we make this chumrah up? So he says the Rishayim they were different. This I find very interesting. How you shine harba b'lisha v'gilgul ad shayini l'shyafa. The Ramban said they did it much more leisurely. They were lush to matzahs in Ramban's house, and they took it down the street to the bakery. So they didn't run around with the same speed that we ran around with. Why? That's a good question. Still don't have a clear answer to that. But they spent time, a lot of time in Lisha. And tell me, Karav Zeh Esrim Shana, is there a date in this tshuva? No. Not that I can see you here. So Latara lived this time of the guy. That was 220 years ago. All of a sudden he says 20 years ago, everybody started getting from. Look, it happens in every dar. Lefnei Esrim Shana, I don't know exactly when he was writing. Let's assume around 1800. Nispashta Zihir Zubi Yisrael Kedoshim Lemar Ma'id Ma'id Belisha. Until 20 years ago, everybody took his time. Again, I don't know why everybody took his time, but they did. And Ein Lashon Yafa Yafa, and therefore there's Kamach Bap and Mata Shel Isa Kasha Kadir B'Chush U'Medagdikim Be'emes. Okay, so says the Balatanya in the bottom paragraph, Ein Limchais B'Hamoynam HaMakilib. You guys on this call, captain of your team is Shlomo Snyder. So I don't know. You want to tote up here? You're in the game with over, whatever. So we need a neutral judge. You want to tote up here to score? I would say it's an absolute tie. Can't go to overtime because overtime will be Ma'aseh Mashiach. When I guess I don't know, people go to Yo Navi and bother him. Do I have to? Or can I eat Knedlech on Pesach? And Yo Navi will tell him what he wants to tell him. But in the meantime, this is time, Klal Yisrael. Because we have plenty of Mekaymais Lahakel. Here we go. We have plenty of places Lahachmer. This is just only 0.00001 of the printed and then written literature on this subject. So I would say it's a tie, and therefore Klal Yisrael agrees with that, and therefore half of Klal Yisrael face doesn't eat Knedlach, and half of Klal Yisrael doesn't eat Knedlach. The Makilim are people like the Goyim, Udiime, according to the Goyim, a vast array of Rishonim. The Machmir are the Magen Avraham, Udiime, and the Baltanya. Baltanya was several days after the Magen Avraham. Udiibam, and it does somehow divide among Chassidim and everybody else. Let's see. HaRav is 1814. Wonderful. We more or less nailed it. And Itzkovitz means Ben Yitzchak in Russian, I guess, right? So Itzkovitz in my mind was always a Ungarish name, but it just wasn't. I guess there are various ways of saying Ben Yitzchak. Okay, Rabbi Sai. Ad Khan, the basic overview on that. Now I got another problem because as far as I know, neither Pesach or Marchai is somehow available. There's some emergency going on, so they're not available for a Chassidish. Is Altishter Mechet to Minig Westek on level didn't unless he's Mataner. Okay, so that's either correct or not. Whether or not you need a Tar Sidorim on Shroya is a good question. It's discussed at length in the current contemporary Paiskim. Some people say yes, and some people say no. We'll talk about the level and the strength of Shroya. You are here, Pesach. Pesach, did you get that email? You're here. Okay, did you get those emails of what I need to put on today? I'm starting with the Mishabura, which came in the file called Avrami. And then I have to go to the other file, the Helfgott file, and I sent you, since it's 25 pages, I sent you an email with the exact number of the pages on it. Okay, Rabbi Sai, for those of you who just came on, let me see. Yes, we've got a bunch of people just joined now. So until now, we were discussing the Yisaidais, the Makairais of the meaning of Shalai Le'echol Shroya and Pesach. We are learning today. L'zeicher Nishmas Taiva Bas Tzvi, the mother of Yididenu, Avram Nissen Pearl, of the Torah Project Commission of Israel, and we are grateful to him and his colleagues in the Torah Project staff and in the graphic staff, Cholam Asayim B'Melachas HaKodesh, for helping us so diligently. Every single day you guys get an email. Every single week an email goes out to 20 million people or whatever. and therefore we're able to spread the word about our unheralded learning program that we have been able to do now for plus years. Okay, Rabbi Sai, we're going to talk today about a adjunct or a sub-issue, the issue of Shroya, which is negated this year. This year, Shabbos, Achon Pesach is Chal Shabbos. So a normal year, those of us, Klal Yisrael, and I've already stated this on the Hachana Shiurim, includes me, who are machmer on Shroya, look forward in great anticipation of Pesach when we can actually eat. This is a wondrous minhag where somehow the minhag lasar gets chopped off the last day. Why would that be? So the first question is, why in fact is that the case? I'll discuss that in a second. And assuming that is the case, and we do eat gebrocks, aka the biggest, but not only Geschmack Simchas Yantav, gebrocks is Kailach, but there are others, of course. If we do on Achshel Pesach, so the minhag is to make these Kneilach. Can't cook from Shishel Pesach to Achshel Pesach anyway. You can't be making for Yantav shame. So you got to wait till after Yantav. Okay, you have another reason to wait to make the Kneilach because you can't make them on Shishel Pesach. You'll be machbid on Shroya, so you can't cook them. So what's the minhag? You wait till after Tzeis when you prepare for the rest of the Chag. Meal starts relatively late, depending on what time zone you're in, and the minhag is to prepare the Kneilach on Achshel Pesach. This year you cannot do that because Achshel Pesach is Shabbos, and of course, no cooking on Shabbos and no serious preparation of food beyond what's 100% mutter on Shabbos, and therefore we're stuck. When you make the Kneilach, so everybody will say, no problem, just make the Kneilach like everything else. There is a mechanism called Erev Tafshilin. Erev Tafshilin allows us to cook from Yom to the Shabbos. Everybody kindly remember, make a note of this now. This is a somewhat odd construct because everybody's used to making Eruve Tafshilin on what we call 3-day Yom Tovim, okay, which doesn't exist in Eretz Yisrael except for maybe Rosh Hashanah sometimes. Here in Chutz La'aretz it exists a lot. And Pesach and Shavuos, on certain calendar structures, there are times when Yantav is Friday and Shabbos. Thursday is not Yantav. So good. But even they did their Erev Tafshilin. You Erev Tafshilin to cook on Friday and Shabbos. So since we prepare an Erev Tafshilin, you'll say, what's the problem? Even if you're not, you can't cook after Tzeis, cook on Shabbos, but you can't do that because if you're machmer and shroya, the cooking process itself, not just the eating process, the cooking process is what we're worried about because it's going to bring l'day chimutz because of the two issues, or three issues that we discussed in the Hachana Shiurim, which are the underlying problems of chimutz. For our purposes now, we'll leave the tayis out and we'll concentrate on, even though that's just as relevant, but we'll concentrate on the shemalay ne'efa karoi kumra. So you can't do that on Friday because you'll be cooking on Pesach with kemach, which will not be matzah meal. Matzah meal. Everybody agrees it can only be matzah meal. It can't use raw kemach. Maybe the matzah meal is not nefa karoi. And if it's not nefa karoi, you are back in the soup. No pun intended. So what do we do this year? This is opens up a whole new issue in Hilchos Yantiv, which is not directly 100% related to Pesach only, but there's an interplay and intertwining between Hilchos Yantiv and Hilchos Pesach. We do have an Erev Tafshilin. Everybody remember to make an Erev Tafshilin. So you're allowed to cook on Friday. Can't cook because of the Chomer Shroya. So what do you do? So a major, what's the right word? Tushtel to this issue is brought up already obliquely, not exactly this way, but it's brought up in the Paiskim in Tav Kuf Chav Zayin. If I can get the Shabur and Tav Kuf Zayin somehow magically up on the screen, I would be appreciative. It's in the first. It's in the first. Package. It just disappeared. No. The Mishnah, we're getting too fancy here. Okay, so the Ramah brings the following issue. It's the page before. This is the first page we have.
Yeah, this is the only page. One on one.
Okay, fine, no problem. I'm gonna read the Mishnah myself. Umi, it's missing 4 words, 2 words. Everybody listen carefully. Sorry, it's missing 2 key words. Umishem is anabiyantif. Okay, you're missing 2 words. Umishem is anabiyantif. Somebody who decided to fast in Yantif. How are you allowed to fast in Yantif? So, of course, this is a whole halachic issue on itself, which we cannot go into. Let's assume somehow this person managed to squeeze in a Issertinus on Yantif. You all know that there are ways to fast in Shabbos and Yantif. If somebody decided to fast in Yantif, so now the question is he allowed to cook for other people? As you know, there is a heter of tzarech echol nefesh in Yantiv. You're allowed to cook for yourself. You're allowed to cook for other people. But what happens if you can't eat yourself? Are you allowed to cook for other people? Says the Ramah, in the name of the Paisei Achnaz, you cannot. If somebody somehow, as I said, managed to get himself itzad heter to fast on Yantiv, he's not allowed to cook for other people. Why is that? And the makar for this is a halach in Hilchos Erev. If somebody did not Erev Tafshilin, which is what it's doing here, Erev Tafshilin. If somebody did not put down an Erev Tafshilin, he is not allowed to be mevashel la'acherim. That is what is doing here in this simon. So somebody made a neder his sanais yantif, and the neder was chal. And he's fasting, he is not allowed to cook for a cherem. Says the Mishnah Brura. Says the Mishnah Brura. Why is that? Because as Ramah says, the Havik Misha Laini Acher. Said the Mishnah Brura in Samach Dalad. Sorry, I need Samach sorry. Ratzlaim, you got it perfect. The Hav Ratzlaim, Kirmai the Kam, Lai Sish Layer Vasal Lashmiat Lashap. Somebody not in the layer, but Zasal Vash, Lovishal Shalacher. Give it Jasal Vash, that's why since you can't cook yourself because you do not have an Erev. Kain who adin beyontiv gufa. Misha mis'ana beyontiv. Somebody who is fasting a yontiv. Let's not go and how we ended up there. The asl vashel b'shvil atzmai. If he's fasting, he has no heter of tzarech echol nefesh by side. The heter of tzarech echol nefesh is only to eat. It's not a heter to cook if you're not going to eat. So if you can't eat it yourself, says the Ramah, based on the kairos in the Pesach of Ashkenaz, you cannot be mavashal for anybody else. And then the Ram says, which is this year, and this mess up happened. Us, not mess up, made a tonight, made a kindness. However, other people want to cook for him. Adkan, Divrei Rabbeinu HaRav. Now, there are those Paiskim. The Chukas Pesach, Sefer Aruch HaShulchan, and Kadmon, the Chida in Mazik Bracha. brought in the Kaf HaChaim, Taf Nun Gimel, Sif Katan Tez Zayin. The Shlomo Kluger, you want to see the Kaf HaChaim? Okay, I don't know how much time I have to see everything inside, but in this, here he says, because of that, Misha Misana, Al Misha Nog is, okay, so the Chidah, let me say it outside, the Kaf HaChaim, according the Chidah, according to Chuksa Pesach, was the Kadmon, in Sfarad and others, and then finally the Machzik Bracha, make a heter here, make a pull here, and I'm going to write it right to you, and then we'll see if we have time to see some inside. They say that even according to this Ramah is only answering to someone who is fasting, which prohibits him from eating anything. He has no heter to be mavashal or be oifel etzerich atzmai because he is proscribed from eating anything. But what happens? What happens if there's a case where he can't eat a specific food? Let's say he didn't make a neder to list anais totally, which is problematic in Yantiv. He made a neder not to eat X, not eating kugel in Yantiv. He needs to get his diet going, not eating kugel in Yantiv. So if he just has an Isra Achila on certain macholim misuyamim, he is allowed to be mevashal la'acherim, even this kugel. He can't eat the kugel because he has a neder on the kugel. He's allowed to make kugel on Yantif for other people. Or if it's Friday, Samach l'Shabbos, he's allowed to make it for himself in Tzarech Shabbos because the neder was only on Yantif. Why? Listen to the Svara. Because ba'efen klali, it is mutter to him to be mevashal. Ba'efen klali. Because ba'efen klali is mutter mevashal, because he can make everything else, because he can eat everything else besides kugel. So we have a heter. Because he's allowed to be mevashal for every other food, the fact that he can't make kugel is not relevant even on the kugel. As far as I say, you can argue with this. Why? He's not allowed to kugel. Why should I allow to make kugel? And this is a svara put down in the Achrayim. As I said, the Kaf HaChaim brings literature here. The Chuksa Pesach, the Revile. Revile, of course, is the source for the Ramah. Uvui Ram Zal is the way the Sfardim called Ramah. Shar Kosav, he talks about kindness. Go down to about line 8. Misha after the parentheses. Misha Nog Isser B'min Echod Kugel. I'm using Kugel. Mutter Levashal Oisei La'acherin Kamaisha Mutter Lefes Chalal L'Koton. They bring 2 shells, various Terim, and he brings the Erech HaShulchan. And he says Rabbeinu Achidah in the Mount Bracha said the same thing. However, not everybody agrees with this. The Rav Ba'olim, he says, even though the Maria Vial, because he's mutter other minei tafshel, I moved down 4 lines. No, still us. Kamakal, if you tell me Ram, okay, we'll have to explain this. But Rabbi say we have machlekes hapaiskim if the Isser is only on a specific food, if it's mutter. What is this discussion of hayel? So just a little background here. I'm sure you all know and understand this. The reason why we are allowed to cook on Yantiv at all, cook from some Yantiv to Shabbos, is because of a package. There's a principle called hayel. Hayel allows us to cook on Yantiv, l'terech Yantiv atzmai, because hayelu mikle archim. You finish your Suda 3 in the afternoon. You makayim simchas Yantiv b'mlayai. You want to take a nap. Hopefully you want to learn. All of a sudden, somebody bangs on the door. He's walking by. And you must have something, and the Rebbetzin ran out of kugel. He's allowed to cook. Why not? You're allowed to cook for people on Yantiv. So because there's a concept of hayel, maybe ikle archim, therefore we're allowed to cook Yantiv. You package that, because I'll package that together. The Sugyan Beitza, with something called an Erev Tavshilit, which is Tav Chav Zayin. And that is why we are allowed to cook. The package of Hayel takes away the Issa Deraisa, the problem of Ein Yantiv Mechel Shabbos. The Erev Tavshilit takes away other problems, and the package of the two allows us to cook on Yantiv for Yantiv and on Yantiv for Shabbos. So that's the references here to Hayel. This Svara, therefore, as you can see now, of whether or not, if you are usher for kugel, whether you can make kugel for other people, depends on what the application of Hayel is. What is the negaya to us, Rabbi Say? It's negaya to us because Rabbi Seinu, Gedolei Olam, used this as a model for our problem of Gibraks Knelach this year, when you have to make the Knelach on Shvi Shel Pesach. You'll still make the Erev Yantiv, same problem. Because the Isra we're talking about here is Shroya, those who are Machmir and Gibraks. And the Isra of Shroya, the same thing if it's Chalamoid or if it's Shvi Shel Pesach. The problem is, whatever the problem of Shroya is, Kemach that's not Nefa Karai will go with the Magen Avraham, the Baal Tanya. That's the problem. That's the problem. There's no difference between Chalamoid and Yantif. So how do you make the Knelach? Teretz is, we now have an application of a food that is usher to one specific subset. Why is that? Because of the Baruch Hashem Big Olam, this Zoom call, half of us keep only Shria and half eat Knelach all year. So all of a sudden, I have a subset of people who the aforementioned kugel is mutter to. So we have the application of this machlekes, whether or not this Ramah holds. The Mishnah Brura in Tav Chav Zayin says the Ramah holds, but many people are mefakbek with the Mishnah Brura based on a well-known machlekes between one of the most chashuv Shver and Edom group coupling in Klal Yisrael. Right? Everybody knows about the Bach and the Taz. Another very chashuv Shver and Edom was the Bein Rebbe Kiva Eger, who was the Gadol Adar, and Bezivik Sheni, he had an Edom called Chasam Sofer, and there's a fascinating dialogue between the two, which the Pesach say is on point in this of a question of how to make the Knelach le'elu shemachmirim on Shroya, aka Gebrakst. What's the issue? So the Rebbe Kiva Eger in two places, in the Drush V'Chidush Beitza, and in a well-known tshuva, which we actually have already seen this tshuva. I sent the page numbers to going of Pesach, so you should be able to come up with the tshuvas Rebbe Kiva Eger. Rebbe Kiva Eger had the following issue: are you allowed to make pachdida, which is the fancy word? I'm not sure which language it is. Are you allowed to make pachdida on? Excuse me. I'm going to let the phone ring out so you can hear over my voice. This is just a piece of the Rebbe Kiva Eger. Because I didn't want to go. Do we have the first page of the Rebbe Kiva Eger? I think we do. I think we had the first page. Yeah, there we go. The Rebbe Kiva Eger wrote a tshuva to going off Bezin of Frankfurt to Hirsch. I guess I'm not sure. I guess that he wrote tshuva, the going of Bezin of Frankfurt was this Rav Hirsch. I'm not sure if it's who this Rav Hirsch was, but he wrote him a tshuva on the following question. Somebody was a chelish ein by sakana. So you all know chelish by sakana, everything is mutter, no problem, no questions asked. A chelish ein by sakana, which we spent a lot of time learning on last year, how that's defined, has certain terim. And he need, whatever reason, the guy had scurvy, and he was dying of scurvy, I don't know, like Letter will correct me, and he needed to have pairs. The problem was very hard to find Paris in Shabbos. Stores were all closed. So the only pears they're able to find is the apple that fallen off the proverbial tree. This is an halacha called Peiros HaNoishrim. And the shaila is the chayla she'ein by sakana, the chayla she'esh by sakana nishtovas tereden. Anything is mutter. You can eat them any machal susuris that's necessary. Be the klalim. But here it's chayla she'ein by sakana. Can you give him peiros that are otherwise Peiros HaNoishrim, which are naila? And naila is a serious form of muktzah, and therefore the Peiros of muktzah. So you're allowed to override the halacha of muktzah for chayla she'ein by sakana. Kiveger kedarka b'kodesh, classical tshuva goes through numerous inyanim mashas. The Teichad Varim references the following question. The meaning was they made pashtida, which is some sort of a cholent. So I guess during the year, like everybody else, they made cholent with probably with syrup in it, which since we don't eat kitnius in Pesach, and we don't cook barley in Pesach, so you can't make a regular cholent in Pesach. They wanted to know if they can use peiros yivashim simukim. Simukim is whatever it is. It's a food. Right. I'm not going to go into the exact definition of what it is, but it's a food. For our purposes, we don't need to know exactly what kind of food what it could be, what the modern day equivalent in the seasons is. So there is a Ramah in Taf Samak Zayin, which brings I don't remember if I remember to put this into the Marmakaimis, so I'm going to have to read it ice to you outside. The Ramah in Taf Samak Zayin brings the following minhag. Ramah in Taf Samak Zayin Ches, I'm sure Pesach can conjure it up if we need it, starts off with all sorts of things we don't eat on Pesach. Mechaber says we don't eat, talks about Dvash, and the minhagim Ashkenaz is we don't eat Dvash, and he talks about Med. It's Taf Samak Zayin Ches. And then the Ramah says, that's it, there it is. Ute'enim yeveshin va'anovim. It's line 4, line 3, line 4. Te'enim, you got it. Te'enim yeveshin va'anovim. Yeveshin the kind of rising kids. You all know the famous song, Rising Kiss, and Rising Kiss means raisins. Gedalim Getanim, Toli Benegam Akaibais. Yesh Machmirim, Slayla, Yesh Machil, Chain Nogel, Medina's Elu. You know, this is a really complicated question, exactly what Medina's Elu is Chalon, you know, Israel is Yates Biad Rama. So generally, Ramah is Chalon all of Bnei Ashkenaz, but I will see in a second that's not 100% true. But the minhag is not to eat peiros yivashim. In Malaysia, you understand Yavshu, B'derech Shein Lachas L'Chamesh, and he goes into a fascinating question about sukkar. Sukkar, who knows? You don't eat sukkar on Shabbos, on Pesach. Ramah says you don't eat sugar on Pesach. I feel like I see. Where does this come from? It was a Deshen. Deshen was the latest, last of the Rishonim, first of the Achronim. This is a whole issue in itself. There are people who machmir not eat sugar, even though the sugar that they're referring to is not our sugar. This is a huge problem, a huge discussion on its own. Everybody knows the famous story. In Brisk, there were machmir, the Brisk HaRav, I should say the whole Brisk. The Brisk doesn't mean city of Brisk, but the mishpachas of Rabbani Brisk didn't eat sugar on Pesach. And once they were in Vilna during the period of fleeing from the Nazis in Machshamam, and they went to visit Reb Chaim Eiser, the Gadol Hadar, and the Rebbe served tea with sugar. So they were in the dilemma. And the Brisk HaRav drank the tea. And on his way out, Rav David, his other sons who accompanied him to visit the Gadol Hadar, said, Tata, v'yesnish zucker. And the Brisk HaRav says, that's true, except if you're in Reb Chaim Eiser's house, then you eat sugar. You can take out of that story however you wish. Let's get back to the raisins. The raisins, here there are most machmer on raisins. So are you allowed to The reason I said that, as you can see, Ramon himself brings it to our place in Machmar. I said this here last night. Everybody said, "Shout to me what you mean." You know, and Chabad eats raisins. Shine. It's true. There are raisins. The reason for the Isra and raisins, Shabur says, because we're worried that somehow some kemach, Pasuk Shabur is in Chavav Pesach. Yes, chasash mefazer alim kemach chasash meyash neisim. Not sure why, but in order to turn anavim into raisins, they would spread kemach on top of it to help the Rajnikas process. You have no idea why. I'm sure they don't do it today. Absolutely positive, but so what? We don't eat, in my house, you don't eat raisins. I'm sure many of yours you don't. Even though all these chashashos, as I mentioned in the Achana Shir, one can easily wipe away by saying that high-tech modern technology prevents all these things from happening. It doesn't matter if it says in the Ramah, that's it. And therefore, we are generally machmer. So, the Shaila, back to Rikveger, that was raised is, are you allowed to cook for a chayla she'ein boi sakana on Shvi Shel Pesach Shechal Be'erev Shabbos? This year, Rabbi Sai, are you allowed to make this pashtida with raisins? Ramah says the minhag is we don't eat raisins on Pesach. So are you allowed to cook it? So the answer is, what are you cooking it for? If you're cooking it for a specific chayla, mela. But here, the shayla is whether chayla kicks in. What does that mean? Because maybe there'll be a chayla shem by sakana. What do you mean a chayla shem by sakana? A chayla shem by sakana is very motzli ma'id. Anybody with severe headache is a chayla shem by sakana. Let's say, enough for the mishkav. I'm not going now into the definitions of chayla shem by sakana. Differences, Shabbos and Yantiv, that's a shira on its own. But let's assume that there is such a concept of chayla shem by sakana, which is matzli. Why am I bringing up the issue of matzli? Because it makes a difference. Taisvis and Psachim, Daf Memvav and Rebeis, a small tais in the bottom, makes a chilik between the chayla sheyesh by sakana and chayla shem by sakana. Taisvis asks Kasha, hayel, everything should be mutter all the time. Why is hayel only when it's mikli erchim possibility, and therefore says Taisvis right before, you can't cook a minute before it says, because it's not likely that erchim are going to show up in the next minute. Can't cook 3 minutes before it says. An hour, yes. 3 minutes, no, because it has to be actually possible and shayach for the hayel process. Says Taisvis, if that's the case, hayel is mutter. So what about hayel? You're allowed to cook for chayla sheyesh by sakana. So everything is mutter. There's no issue ever not cooking a yantif because maybe you won't need it for chayla sheyesh by sakana. Says Taisvis, a chayla sheyesh by sakana is not shchiach. Baruch Hashem, chayla sheyesh by sakana, not shchiach. I don't know if you're cooking in a hospital, maybe it's different. Stop it, you're cooking at home. It's not likely that there's a chayla sheyesh by sakana right in your ambit, I think is the right word, that will matter you to cook. However, a chayla she'ein by sakana, very shchiach, as we all know. If that's the case for Pesach, let's go back to the Eger Cipher. Reb Kiveger was matir to cook this pashtida. It's in the next page, the next is clip out page, and a place we are noiheg lahakel an achron shel Pesach. What does that mean? That means the following: even the ilu eisrin to eat raisins, which is right min of Ashkenaz, they are not machmer and achron shel Pesach. Lo and behold, we found something else which is similar to shroya. Why are we not machmer an achron shel Pesach with shroya? So that's a good question. And the Bnei Saschar, of all people, Sefer Bnei Pekudecha, explains the reason for that is because Ikar Hadin shroya is mutter. Ikar Hadin shroya is mutter, but Klal Yisrael medagdikim beKala v'Chamura and want their results of Tacha of Misha Nizar Michomet on Pesach is Muftach Shloyechta. So they will makabel themselves all sorts of chumras in Pesach, including a chumrah of not to eat Russian kids, because maybe the kemach was spilled in it. We'll makabel bigger things, not to eat kidneys, which takes out a major portion of a Jew's carbohydrate diet. But these are chumras, not equating shroya and kidneys. Let's not go there. They're different in their level of isser because they were promulgated at different times in history. So if you Russian kiss apparently was promulgated at the time of the Merivale in Ashkenaz, and they used to sprinkle kemach on the novim to aid in the raisinization process. I just invented a new verb, and therefore this is a chumrah. And a chumrah cannot have the force of an isser. So in order to accentuate that, said Pesach, when matter the last day of Pesach, everybody else had the Chinese just chumrah to etc. Rabbana, but just chumrah. So why should we be matter things? It's a strange thing. There it is. It's a chumrah. In order that Klal Yisrael should be educated, maybe because of I did see this language in the Pesachim. Of like this is going to do it. People are going to start fighting with each other. People are going to be mazniach and scream at the people who are machmor and shroya. And this is going to cause the Rambam's famous dicta in Perigid Beis of Hilchos of all these are reasons to accentuate that it's only a chumrah and therefore it's mutter nachashal Pesach. Same for the raisins. The raisins are mutter or nachashal Pesach. Are you allowed to cook them on Shvi Shel Pesach or Erev Shvi Shel Pesach? Says Rekiveger, yes. Why? Because Choshen Beskana is allowed to eat raisins. Why? Because when Klal Yisrael was makabel this chumrah, two groups are excluded. Chayil Shesh Bekana is you don't need an exclusion. Chayil Shesh Sakana and Tinai Kais. We were not mekabel this chumrah of a Russian kiss on these two groups. Says Rekiveger, guy has a headache, a severe headache. He needs raisins. Don't ask me why. Mutter. A tinuk, 4-year-old kid. You don't have anything else to eat him. Needs his porridge with his breakfast cereal, and he needs raisins. Simukim mutter. Says Rekiveger, it's a chayla, it's a hayol, and therefore it is mutter. The Taisus Psachim says that it's shchiach, and Memela it is subject to hayol. Ad kan divrei Rekiveger. Let's take a very quick look since we're running behind here, as always. Next, where's the next page? No, the whole truth is here. No good. Keep on going. The whole truth is here. No good. Okay, so keep on going. I'll tell you where stop. It's the page with the footnote on it. Back up a bit. Freeze. So freeze. No, back up a bit. Previous page. Slow, please. Figure ranges across all of Shas. Dark of a Kodesh. No, it's not this page. Everybody's saying I have to pull out my pages. I'll tell you which page it is. Give me a second. No, Pesach. Let's go from the beginning. It's I think the 4th page or the 5th page. It has a footnote on it which references the. Okay, this is page 1. This is page 3. Stop. Nope. This is page 4. Keep on going. Sorry, everybody's side till we nail it here. Here we go. So where the Eischav Gimel is glossing, and we'll see this one paragraph, and we'll go to his Edom. Scroll it up a little bit for Pesach. First, then this paragraph here. The first paragraph, a little bit more. Well, freeze. As I said, you literally cover half of Shas, at least half of our Chaim. And he says, Rum Kvaid Malasai, Rabbi Hirsch was matter, similar to Shabbos and Yantul Chol by Sakana. Go to line 4. B'shayich shaper hayil b'mikla archim. Who are the archim? Chol Hashem by Sakana. Why is that? The dafka chol yesh by Sakana leishchiach klal. As I state in Taisus, we are not worried about a chol yesh by Sakana. It's just simply not shchiach, and that cannot be used as a basis for hayil. Aval ein by Sakana shechiach. Says from Kiveg, if that's the case, so too here. Name a hoil, Mikla Chashem by Mikla. I don't know what that. What's that? A hay? Hashem by Sakana. Okay. That was the shaila here by Sai. If the chayil is allowed to eat, chayil Hashem by Sakana is allowed to eat the parasanaisha. Look in the footnote, you can see. In Chav Gimel, he says, "V'chein Kasa Rabbeinu," just sort of, Heintig Mecham would make a whole veneer. Lefianis Daiti, you make a whole page out of it. Kveger makes 2 lines out of it. Go down, but finds that Kveger is the same as 200 pages of somebody else. Go down to the footnote. V'chein Kasa Rabbeinu, V'drosh v'chilush, make bigger if you can. Look at us. Yantav Achrein Shal Pesach Shachal B'Shabbos. Our year. No, Yin Lahatman, Bataner Samachesa, Pastida. But Pastida is a big machlekes in the delis. But whatever it is, Lecho B'Yantav Achrein. Why are you allowed to do that? We're machmer a pidus ramah and raisins on Yantiv. Keep on going. Absolutely, Shaykh by as far as Hayil v'Chazal Archim. So b'yayim zay and oichon smukim. We don't eat smukim in yayim zay. Amrein hayel v'yikla chelishem b'yitzakana v'heter. Adkan the ashva'a to Reb Kiveger in the drush v'chidush, because it's mutter mitam hayel. Even though we don't eat smukim on yayim zayin, hayel a chelish ein b'yisakana is mutter to eat raisins. It is now Hayel applies, and it's mutter. Rabbi Kiveger wasn't sure, believe it or not. He wasn't sure this far. So when you have an Adam like Kiveger had, you ask, "What's trachtir my entire Adam?" And he did. And Muva, Betshuvais, Chav Sefer, Eir Chaim, Semen. Move it down, and we'll see the simon. Give it a simon. Archaim test. Move the scroll down, please. Keep on going. No. Scroll down to the next Marmakayim, please. There you go. Keep on going. Keep on going. There you go. Chasam Sefer Simin Ayin Tes. Rabbeinu Rabban Shekol Bnei Agoyla was writing to. We know exact date. Tav Kuf Tzadik Zayin. And going to a person Chulu at the person who was writing to Matzchias, depending how you pronounce it, who was at the time, I guess, relatively younger, and he was the Rav of a place called Zalakva. Akrais, not sure where Zalakva is, somewhere presumably in Galicia/Ukraine. And this is what he says. The Shaila was, Al Divrei Torah b'Meshach Litkal Rishayim B'Chayil Shesh by Sakana B'Shabbos. This is the famous Machlekes move Baran and Yuma that we spent a lot of time in last year. Now let's go down. You have to shrink it to Pesach because I'm not interested in this page. I'm interested in a later page. I think I thought I gave the exact page. I guess I didn't. That's it. Keep on going. No, I sent the exact page. Could you look at the email? I sent the exact page where he mentions the shver.
Give me a second to look at the email. Yeah, got
There
it.
it is. There it is. There it is. The bottom of the page. Zeli Ezer Shanim. Freeze it right there. Ishal Tibi Marichami Agoyin Rukiveger. Not bad. The shver asked me. It's interesting. He uses very flowery language to discuss, to be metire all the shayalim. When it comes to the shver, he kept it as spare as possible because gadol b'rab shemai. You don't have to write flowery language bigger. Noig and lecho peris uvashim lojanish b'yantavachim shel Pesach. That was the minig in Posen. Mashma from the Chumsefer, that wasn't the minig everywhere. Maybe they weren't matter not shel Pesach. Maybe. Hey, that's already a shir on the Menhagim. B'hinei oz chal b'Shabbos. That was like this year. The Rotza sha'achva daiti. He asked for some sefer. There was only 3 years difference in the two. There was some sefer when he married Mrs. daughter was already the Gadol Adar in Austro-Hungary. The sefer was the Gadol Adar in, I guess, Bohemia, Slovakia, and Shmoi was Heilig Lefanov to all the rest of Europe too. But in those days, everybody had their own Pesachim for their geograph there. Anyway, Matar Lachem B'Yantiv Zayim Pesach Tafshir Mal Tzarech Machar. Greg had a svara, and this svara was Hayom, but he wasn't sure. And sure enough, he had a reason not to be sure. Chofsefer disagreed. Why? Nobody can eat these raisins on Shvisel Pesach. So the Hayel doesn't apply. Teretz is it's for tomorrow. But tomorrow, why should it be mutter for tomorrow? Without Hayel, you can't be mutter for tomorrow to cook. Because remember, cooking from Yontif to Shabbos requires a package of Hayel Merev Tavshil. No Hayel, and it's usher to be mechem for Yontif Shabbos. Only because of Hayel. That's the whole Sugis HaGemara in Pesachim and in Beitza. So you can't eat it on Zayin Shel Pesach, so it's not mutter. So how could you possibly cook it for Achim Pesach for Shabbos? So B'Kvega was matter for the reasons we said, and he says Hayel applies. You can make this paragraph a little bit bigger. Pesach for name Hayel v'chazal chayla I'll feel shame by sakana. It's too big. The name Hayel v'chazal chayla shame by sakana. There's shchiach. The lie I see lie says I did not agree with the shver. Why not? When we read it ice from my side, and the reason is because the Chassam Sofer felt that if we're going to say that a chaylish end by sakana, maybe that's shchiach. But the key in hayel is shchichus. Tyson says chaylish ein sheyesh by sakana, not shchiach. Hayel doesn't work. Otherwise, everything will be mutter because there's always somebody sick somewhere. The sakana. Teretz is not shchiach. Hayel doesn't work if it's not shchiach. Not shchiach archim to become 30 seconds before it says. Doesn't help. Has to be shchiach. So what's the machlekes here? Whether these, whether the Rajin kiss for achalish and by sakana shchiach or not. Says the V'Kivega, yes. And by sakana, big vast population size. 5% of Klai Yisrael at any time is the chalish and by sakana. I just picked the number out of the hat. Says some Sefer, no. I don't know any machla that is dependent on eating raisins. Never heard of such a thing. I know that somebody's sick, you got to give them food. Maybe you got to give them buster, that we know from the Rishonim. But what does it say that there's a chayla she'ein by sakana is cured by raisins? Maybe the guys in Dole or whatever would love to advertise that. And he says, therefore, it can't have hayel. Skip down here. And he said, no, it's in this paragraph. The rest of this is brilliant, but we have no time to go into it. So by side, we have a machlekes between the V'Kivega and the Chassam Sofer in what seems to be pretty close to our shaila. Take out raisins, insert knedlach. And now we have a shaila. Is there hayel on this? Can't eat it on traditional Pesach. So who is the subset that needs to eat, who can eat knedlach? You'll say, half a Klal Yisrael. Half a Klal Yisrael was not makabel themselves, the minhag shroya. So what happens if one of my chashuv friends here on this call shows up at my house on the Yontiv afternoon, and he eats knedlach? Am I allowed to make knedlach for him? Oh, I have a Ramah. It says Misha Masanet can't eat, can't cook for somebody else. That's if, however, if it's usher for you. So here the knedlach are usher for me, but it's mutter for you. The raisins are usher on traditional Pesach. The mutter for chaylish yesh by sakana. The knedlach are usher for Gottesman, but they're mutter for everybody else who eats shroya. Is this mutter or not? Seems to be a machlekes from Kiveger and some Sefer. Is hayel applicable in this case? In the Kutam and Aras some Sefer, they bring other Paiskin, Shalom Meshiv, and others who disagree with the Chasam Sefer. And they said, Rukaveg is right. This is hayel. No chel in these Rajakas, but maybe some chel in these Rajakas. It seems to be a machlekes about Rajakas, but it's not. Look in the Shalom Meshiv, Ketak B'Kodesh to Lembeg or HaRav, go through again an incredible wide range of issues. Okay, it doesn't apply to other things. The kidneys. Let me, since we're running out of time, Rabbi Sai, let me now tell you what really is the modern day application. Most poskim, I'm going to take a look at the Chaznish. We're going to go about 5 minutes over time with your Rishus. Most poskim, on the first of all, Mishnah Brura itself in Tav Chav Zayin, there's a lot of mefakbikim on it. So not everybody agrees with this Mishnah Brura in Tav Chav Zayin that the Ramah is right. Many people argue with the Ramah. Most poskim approach this issue of whether or not the hayel is matir or not, and they're split on this. On one hand, we have a large subset of people, such as Sephardim. When it comes to raisins, Sephardim were never makabel raisins. We never makabel kidneys. So half a Klal Yisrael eats kidneys and raisins. So maybe you can cook for them. So why should it be usher? So it's mutter. I can't say I did a statistical analysis, but many poskim hold that simukim, and listen carefully because I don't want them to get the wrong impression. Raisins is usher. This is pashtidu with raisins on Shishul Pesach. Many people, Sephardim and Cholim Shein by Sakana eat it. So they reject Kiveger, and they pass it to some Sefer. 3 reasons. First of all, the minhag to Aser Tzimukim goes back l'chayra earlier than shroya. We discussed in the Achana Shira that maybe there are some Akaris in Rishayim for shroya, but Ikar din shroya is an Achana Chumra. Tzimukim is the Rishayin Chumra, or in the Rishayim and Ashkenaz, and therefore, even though there are people who are not makabel it, most prominently Sephardim, and when they made this Chumra, Gedali Ashkenaz, they excluded Chayam Shem by Sakana and Ketanim. Doesn't matter. That is not sufficient to be called hayel, because yes, the Takana was made that way, but that's not a subclass which is excluded. They were never the Takana in the first place, and therefore, I'll give you some sites: the Marsham, the Das Torah, the Minchas Yitzchak, which we have brought here, which you can see later on your own. They all say that hayel doesn't apply here. That's problem. That's issue number one. Reason number one. Second, and this is very important for us, or about to get to Knedlach, since according to those who are Noeg Isser on Simukin, they hold it to Medina, it's just not just a Chumrah. So the Macholim Kamuktzah, a separate problem as we've learned over and over again in our shiurim, you always have to be careful about all sorts of different isurim floating overhead. And now the problem is you can't touch it because it's muktzah. If you can't eat, you can't touch it. So it's muktzah. And this is discussed by Rabbeinu Chazon Ish. We'll see how he holds. The third reason L'Esar is brought in Lachas Katanas, Das Torah, recently in Laharis Nasser, Nasser Mishtetner, that we're worried that the person making the pashtida with the tzimukim is going to chop a raisin or ride. Also, in official Pesach, he's making it for either a chayla or a cotton. The mom is making for the cotton, or you're making it for the next day, when maybe it's mutter. So you're going to chop around a little piece. We're worried about that, and therefore it's usher. Ad kan, the raid on raisins. And now the shaila is, what about Shroya? What about our knedlach? So far, we're in trouble because most paiskim will tell you that simukim are usher. Comes along Rabbeinu Chazon Ish in Hilchos Muktzah of all places and gives you a heter. It's a little bit ironic that most of Klal Yisrael, Hasidim were not necessarily subject to that. The Chazon Ish should be relying on the Chazon Ish, but the Chazon Ish has compatriots in the non-core literature world who agree with him. Let's put the Chazon Ish up. And the Chazon Ish says that the minhag of Shroya L'Esar is not similar to Tzimukim. Tzimukim may be a problem, and it may be Muktzah, because it goes all the way back to the earlier Rishonim of Anish Shroya. Here he brings, go down. Where is this? It's the wrong place. The site for the Chazon Ish. You got to go to the Chazon Ish. You have to go to, there's the wrong one. Chazon Ish. Go to, I saw it earlier. I don't know which one you're using. Maybe go to the one that I sent, the first one that I sent. Let's get the site of the Chazon Ish.
Tell me page 15. This is page 15.
No, so this is the wrong one. I'm going to give you the exact site. The exact site is go to the other email if you can and pull down the Chazon Ish. Everybody say, I apologize for this.
There's no other Chazon Ish.
No, go to the other email.
I got both emails. I did not see any Chazon Ish.
I saw it before. It's here. Chazon Ish Simon Memtes. You've got design. The end of Memtes. You're in Nun already. It's the end of Memtes. It's Memtes. Memtes Tezain. So let's look for Memtes Tezain. There we go. Okay. Oh yeah, we got it. So the Chazon Ish in Tezvav starts with this. Yesh la'ayim b'din matzah shruya Tezvav across the street. Okay, everybody say, I know I'm taking the liberty here, which I know is a little bit of liberty, so I apologize. It'll be over at 1:05. The Chazon Ish says it's too big. Pesach. Chazon Ish says, it talks about matzah shruya and achshel Pesach. La'noying by iser b'chol yemei chag u'mekilim b'achshel Pesach, which, as we mentioned earlier, that's the minhag of Rav Chasidim. So the shaila is it muktzah or not? The knedlach muktzah. The nearer the ein le'esem shom muktzah. It was Asa ben Hashmoshes, and without going to a big analysis of Issa Muktzah, which we don't have time for, anything that's, that's Asa ben Hashmoshes is Asa Kol Echad. It says, given the Israel Machal Shem Sha'avar, this is a sugi called Muktzah Machal Shem Sha'avar. It goes through a large Muktzah discussion. We don't have time for this. And then at the end of this Sif, end of Tezvav, he says, end of Tezvav, go to the left side. Yeah, beautiful. HaRav Paiskim Machmir Mishabur Be'alacha, end of Tezvav. After the Kivim Matar Mutter beyond the Gufei, Tzarech L'Nei from Mutter, and he said it's Mutter. Amnon. Now comes the Chazon Ish, which is directly negated to our problem. But again, what was our problem? Our problem was that are you allowed to cook on Shvi Shel Pesach for something that's usher to eat on Shvi Shel Pesach, which could be the Isser in Russian Kiss is that way. Maybe it's a Machlekes the Pesachim, maybe it's a Machlekes for Kveger, some cipher whether Hayel applies in such a case, seems to be. But says the Kaddish, it does not apply to Gebrakst. Why is that? Because he says the only reason we could possibly say it's usher if the act that we are worried about in the case of Tzimukim is an isser. But if it's only a minig, it doesn't apply. It's his lashon. If it's an isser dikadin, we would have to be noyeg that's aslakal. Tzimukim be'etzem adin are aslakal. The Gedali Ashkenaz, who promulgated this chumrah, carved out two exceptions: Chayil Yishem Beisakana and Ketani. But it's really us and everybody. Not like Shroya. Shroya is not us and everybody. It's only usher to those of us who took on Shroya. And that is Kedvarim Hamutarim Bechmiru. That's what Shroya is. It's different, but Chefza, sorry to use the language, than the aforementioned Rozenkis. But what is it like? It's like a private nether. Have a rakin no do. The Kevin Shroya and Heter, at least, I don't know, a significant portion of Klal Yisrael, we're going to the statistics, eats Shroya. It can't be muktzah. It can't be muktzah if a very big portion of Klal Yisrael eats it. Why was it one done? The Nira. Even though you can have to back until Pesach, after Shabbos. Says the Chaznish, if this was really an Isser, it will be Asr Achashal Pesach too. Seems that he holds that Smukim, I guess, is Asr Achashal Pesach too, even though it seems to be sorry, but different minhagim. But if Shruya was a real Isser, it would be no such a thing that it's mutter the last day of Pesach. No such a thing. You can't eat outside of the sukkah on Shana Rabbah. No such a thing. The last day is mutter. You can't eat chametz on Pesach. So why should it be mutter? Chametz Pesach is Pesach. Eretz is, it's not chametz. What is it? A chumrah. A chumrah, which is arguably chumrah chayka. That cannot make it muktzah. Why? Because a significant portion of Klal Yisrael has never makabel this chumrah. You don't want to put your hat on the table. But I wasn't makabel at chumrah. I put my hat on the table. The Nira, given I get back to Pesach, a Shroya. Is a raya she'ein machzikin zel Yisrael k'noder, ve'ein levatel ben hagam, but says the Chaznish, it's not a din of Isser, and therefore it's al zeh samchu. It happened, there was Samech in this before. They had this part before. But once it was codified in the Chaznish, the Chaznish was neutral in this fight, or he didn't have a tzad in this fight because he ate Shruya. But al zeh samchu, because of this svara, everybody to make Knei Lechem Pesach. However, it's not, the halachic controversy didn't end there. Came along, Ramesh Sternbach, Zoller gesund stark sein. And in one of his early works, and then we have this man, I don't have time to read to you the whole thing inside because we're out of time. But he discusses it in Chazanish, and it's not appelled to you that Ramesh Sternbach is machmer. I'll read you the first paragraph, and then you can see the rest of it. Ayom. It's also now a chodesh nifla b'chazanish. Seif sim b'mem tes. Shedan l'mishna gets to b'pesach himself mukta b'shabbos v'yantiv. And he says Rav Moshe Sternbach, that it depends whether it's a isser or it's a minute. Im machzikim ol isser, then too bad. It's mukta. Avol ilu gets a varm matam for have a mukta. And he says, since we eat it in Achashal Pesach, can't be. Okay, says Rav Moshe Sternbach, Bekasha, ain't there raya? What kind of raya is this from Achashal Pesach? The Efshim comes Pesach, the Raisa, Daitim, James, Chumra, El Medina. Chayav Nizar, Mash ain't can't be until Achashal, which is only Rabbanon. And he goes through the issue with very Geshmaka. Ewan, I would recommend this to you, and at the end, I'll show you the last You scroll down, you can see the end. He says, the Timini and the Gam Kiveger and Scham Sefer. Okay, gotta have big places to be matmiya. I'm not gonna go through this inside Pesach because it's already too late. Gotta have big places to be matmiya on the Chaznish and Kiveger and Scham Sefer in one tshuva. But this is what he does, and he comes out lahachmer and elastish machnelach this year. Okay, it doesn't affect so much of his olam because Rabbi Sternbach, as you know, is an eniklo of the Goyin mitzad the Pinis side of his yichus. The Goyin ate knelach all year round. The Goyin ate all Pesach around, so not a problem. So I'm not sure exactly what his niyug is because he has some Chassidish blood too, even before he became the Ravid with the Shlomo. But Al Kaponim, this controversy is not 100% closed because Yesh Machmirim, I recommend this man to you as reading on Yontif to be Makayim Mitzvah Chag B'Chag. Adkan Rabbi Sai, a little bit of an overview of something that is Naget this year and the reason LP Rabbi Seinu Achrei Achronim why it's mutter to make Neilach this year before Shabbos. You can't make it on Shabbos. Chas v'sholom, don't become Taya and do that. And all Nashim are vastly educated now. These kind of things don't happen. And that's the reason for that. Okay, Rabbi Akpan this week. On Sunday, Emir Tashem, we will reconvene to hear from Agana Rasha Weiss. So we're talking about Shabbos Agadol, the Halacha, and Agada. I don't have the exact topic yet, which I wasn't able to get yesterday. I'll get it today, Emir Tashem. We can send it out. Mitzvah Shabbos, there will be a shir Mitzvah Shabbos last year of our Zman at 9:30. We'll do Shlomo on all the stuff that we were not able to get to. I'll go through some of the Alech Lamais, Stingerbrucks, Kalim, Nidarim, and things like that. 9:30. Thank you for reminding me on Mitzvah Shabbos, Sunday morning at 11. Everybody have a good day. Next week there will be a full schedule through Thursday. Every day, Lachana Shiurim, Shiurim at night, and Shiurim clothing. Everybody have a good day. Thank you very much.